Hello, everybody, and welcome back to part 2 of my review of Tool's Fear Inoculum album. This is it. 13 years has gone by, nothing since 2006, and then boom, we got Tool. I mean, there's been Pucifer in a perfect circle, but we talking the Tool end of things. And so this is the show, the Rock and Beards podcast, where we break down albums track by track, and it's time. And I went through the whole intro speech for real in part 1, which I highly recommend you watching before part 2, but if you do want to just jump in from here, it's a track by track breakdown. I give you thoughts and opinions. This is the second part. I'm not going to go into as much detail on certain elements that I covered in the beginning, like how dope their mixing is and stuff like that. But basically, check that out and let me know what you think in the comment section. And if you make an effort to leave a comment, I'll make an effort to answer you, and we'll have a little conversation there. And I'd love to hear what you think about this project, and most importantly, if you think that this is worth the 13-year wait. Also, what do you think of the album cover? I wasn't very moved by it, but I'm very curious if y'all were moved by it in some way or another. Anyway, I don't want to waste a bunch of time because, as you can tell, these are pretty long songs. So what I decided to do for this review, to make my life a little bit simpler, as a lyrics guy who normally can just kind of coast by doing poetry analysis and mildly commenting on the music, Tool doesn't give you a choice. As an example, for the next track that we will inevitably get to, I think half the song is just music, like the whole second half. There's no words. So if I were to just be like, that's a nice outro, I'm pretty sure a bunch of y'all Tool fans watching this would get real mad and call me a tool, and not in the good way. Anyway, so I went through each of the tracks. I listened to them over and over again. And what I tried to do is map them out into various parts. I might not be the best at describing the music side of it, but I'll do what I can to walk you through my experience going through it in the different parts of the track as I timestamp them. And keep in mind, my timestamps are approximate. It could be off by like up to 10 seconds. I was trying to get this done as quick as I could, and I promise you I spent at least an hour on every single song on this album while doing my review, just to try to do my best to try as hard as Tool. Well, I mean, not like I could try as hard as they did, but to give as much of an effort as I could, considering how much effort they put out to create such a beautiful and wonderful project for us. On that note, if I keep jibber jabbering, I may be descending into you clicking the X off this video. Alright, so the way I'm recording this is a little bit like I'm going to talk about a part and then I'm going to go listen to the song. So if it gets weird and jump cutty and a little awkward, it's not the typical way I make these videos, and I'm just trying something out to do my best to cover the song in its fullness, because there are so many parts to each of these songs as I described, and this one starts off with a cool thing, because I'll just do a little brief album recap. So we had Fear Inoculum, which presents the idea of, let's say, the media and the global narrative of anxiety and divisiveness to be almost an enemy. In Pneuma, we get presented the idea that everybody really stems from the same thing, and we're all one, bound in our useless physical flesh, and our energies are all kind of ethereal. My theory on Litany contre le peur is it kind of sets us up with this ambient anxiousness, and then it flowed into Invincible, which looked at the solo battle of a warrior within themselves, coming to term with the wisdom of age, and honestly just being self-aware and being prepared, but simultaneously it's kind of preparing for a bit of a war that seems to be going on. And I'll touch on that a little bit at the end of the album when I'm recapping, but my theories at least. But I definitely think it's how to, in the goal of Maynard here, is to kind of present a little how-to on dealing with the modern environment. So in Invincible, it seemed like to be proud of who you are and what you've accomplished, in spite of what people say. Even though you might struggle with relevancy and truth in things, there's still pride within yourself. and that's something that should exist, and that makes you invincible almost. I don't know, maybe I'm just projecting a bit. I went into much more depth in the first part. Then we moved into Legion Inoculum, where it's almost like this anxious tension as you're facing the enemy, or you're getting ready to face the enemy, almost as if the whole first part was to prepare you to get ready for what's about to come. And then in Descending, we get our first part, which represents about 1 minute and 14 seconds of the beginning of this song. Also, we've now approached the longest song on the album we're talking about, albeit not the longest on the project. This song is actually 13 minutes and 38 seconds long. Beautiful. Like, it's insane to me how excited I am at the length, because I'm telling you, a little bit of a spoiler, it's worth it. Like, it's just worth it to listen to the entirety of this song. You do need to commit. What I mean is, don't play like 5 minutes, pause it. Nah, like, wait till you have that 15 minutes and go through it. Hell, wait till you have 90 minutes and just do the whole album one shot. It is a great way to consume this album. But if all you're going to do is part-time it, go for it. But I don't know that you'll get the full experience unless you're playing it through. And you guys can let me know what you think about that idea. I mean, for me, I feel like once you've mapped out the song and you're comfortable with it, okay. But the first time you hear it, like, there's so many grooves and shit. It's just impossible to, in my opinion, to really get the full experience if you're just kind of whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. So anyway, there's a bunch of staticky but like ocean kind of noises and like an empty beach in the night. Maybe I was thinking about Normandy and just the calm before the storm of a situation. Like, you look at a scene like a beach, and in the one hand it can be peaceful and serene. On the other hand, it could turn into one of the most notable battles in history kind of thing. Around 45 seconds in, it adds in some more sounds, kind of like a car or whatever. And again, I was just kind of left with the impression that this is kind of like a beachy, oceany scenario, but really representing an upcoming something, like a tension that's going to go into something deeper and darker than what we've had, perhaps. Like, I don't know, like, if that's what I thought at first, or if I'm projecting with what I know now. Either way, it does flow into the next part now, where the band actually kicks in and, you know, shows us what Tool's about on this track. So one thing about this song I think we can go to that stands out is the band kicks in, and it's kind of got like this somber, sad tone to it. It's calm. It doesn't have any heaviness yet. And about 20 seconds after the band kicks in, Maynard starts singing. And as far as tracks on this album goes, I think this is the earliest we get actual vocals from when the band kicks in, not necessarily from 0-0 on the song. And lyrically, I think it's interesting. He goes, free fall through our midnight, this epilogue of our own fable. So he's kind of sings that in one tone, and then the other half of the verse he sings differently. So here, if we think about it, free fall through our midnight. So I think instantly minutes to midnight, or midnight being the darkest hour. It almost implies this is the end, especially with the nuclear winter kind of perspective of what midnight can represent. It is almost like the end of the world, and this epilogue of our own fable. The epilogue is the end of the book. It's the closing part that kind of, it's almost like what time has passed and you get your little closure. So in a sense, it's what happens after, looking back a little bit. And then he kind of goes into this haunting, calm voice as he goes, like, the heedless in our slumber, floating nescient we. Hold up, I didn't even look this up. What does nescient mean, everyone? I'm about to Google with y'all. I hope it doesn't take me long. Nescient, boom. It means lacking knowledge, ignorant. Now we all learn together, unless you already knew that. So that's pretty clear. We have no idea what's going on because we ignorant. And if you look around at our little society that we live in, is a bunch of people who are blissfully ignorant, choosing not to indulge the harsh truths of the reality of our world. Like, if the environmental scientists are like 10% correct, it's pretty whack at how little we seem to be adapting as a culture or a society, as we continue to embrace the things that almost brought us to ruin. Almost like, well, that's what we do. Let's get to it. what's super interesting, just from the grammar, because I don't see this kind of thing a lot, in the line floating nescient, comma space, we. And it's like the way he uses the word we. He could have said we are floating nescient, but it actually is grammatically correct to go floating nescient, we. I just don't see anybody do that. But it almost adds this like poetic hauntingness to it, the way he phrased that sentence. Super fresh. Anyway, what's a little bit different about this is that it kind of like continues on with the vocals and the verses for a little bit. I'm going to keep going through it, but I feel like up until about the halfway point, this song is the most static, relatively speaking. Not that this is a non-pleasant thing or anything, and obviously it's alive and dynamic, but compared to how drastically different the other ones were changing, I mean. What I mean is from about like the minute 15 when it kicks in till about this 3-minute point, this is the longest consistent intro. It does continue to change, don't get me wrong. But we do get our next verse where he goes, free fall through this boundlessness, this madness of our own making. If you think about, again, the state of the world and everything we're watching, however you feel about certain politicians or whatever, I mean, this isn't exactly like we can put all the blame on the people who manipulated us. At a certain point, all of us got to look a little inward and go, yeah, we did this collectively as people. And one of my favorite lyrics on this entire project comes next as he goes, falling isn't flying, floating isn't infinite. And I thought that was fascinating, right? Because falling, flying, and floating all kind of would look the same in some way. Like if you took a still shot of all three of these things, they would look exactly the same in an image. However, falling is clearly gravity's force of sucking you down. It's a bad thing, but it looks like flying, and it might even feel like flying until the moment you realize you have no control. That's the difference between falling and flying, is control. We all feel like we're flying in a world where we might be falling, and floating isn't infinite. And I think that's nifty because one of the things where you truly float, floating being the absence of gravity and whatnot taking place, would be space. And in space, you get the idea of infinite. So for me, I thought that was all super cool. And I think what he's pointing out is what we perceive isn't necessarily what's real. And I thought that was really amazing. And then, oh shoot, I'm sorry if the mic sounded bad there. I moved it with my foot. But we move on about 3 minutes into the track, and like the beat now starts to change into something a little groovier. So it gets kind of a little funky as the pre-chorusy part comes in. Again, when I say pre-chorus, that's what it says on Genius. I am so bad at naming parts of songs like that. But he goes, come, our end suddenly, all hail our lethargy, concede suddenly. And I mean, I suppose it's hard to deny that this would, I mean, I look at this like it's about climate change, how our world is kind of choosing to indulge this. And it's not just climate change. I guess it's all things like, why are we still pushing nuclear dick wagging? Why are we still doing all of these archaic backwards things that are clearly destructive for the planet? Why do we still jump on plastics and all of these things? I mean, even if I admit I've made changes, but like I don't even try as hard as I'm supposed to, and it really is lethargy. Concede suddenly. And I think the part of the suddenly, it's like all of a sudden it's going to be kind of too late. And I think that's really interesting. Then it picks up. The drums kick in a little heavier, and it goes to the quickened dissolution. Pray we mitigate the ruin, calling all to arms and order. And that's where I kind of really like the transition lyrically. Something that grinds my gears a little bit related to how scientists and media and people talk about these issues is the doomsday scenario that gets attached to all of it. The reality is, if you take a bunch of selfish people and you tell them it's pointless to try, they're not going to get the message that now's the time to start trying, which is kind of what's been done with the fear-mongering for like a decade. Just telling people it's too late, but try. And it didn't work. Well, go figure. You told people that there's no point because it's too late, and then you got mad at them for not trying. Well, I don't know, but most people I know in that kind of a moment where it's too late probably gonna party it up till they're dead, because that's unfortunately the hedonistic, self-indulgent place that we kind of live in these days. So I guess what really impresses me is, as he points out, that what's coming is the end. We still have the option to mitigate the ruin. So yes, bad things are coming, but it doesn't have to be the end. We can maybe do something to not have it completely obliterate us into nothing. Like maybe the bleakness doesn't have to come to be, and there's something, like there's a better choice that somebody that in a country that's freaking caring about trying to solve this solution will solve. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, the song does go on. So you get like the drums really kicking in as the next verse flows in, and I feel like the tone of the song, while bleak, is hopeful at this part. You know, it's not necessarily happy, but it's also not necessarily that like nihilistic. It's over. It's almost like it's going down, but we can fight. And I like that feels to be, maybe I'm reading into my little narrative of the album, but I feel like musically that's the emotion I'm getting. As he goes for the third verse, again, 2 lines, but drifting through this boundlessness, this madness of our own making. And I think this is commenting on culture. The fact that we're all governed through these ideas that allow us to keep making the choices that create the madness of our own making. And then what's interesting about this song is we're 4 minutes and 17 seconds through, and it's basically been like lyric after lyric, part after lyric part. And something that's different here is the lack of 30-second, minute-long music breaks, sometimes even 3 minutes between vocal parts. And I think structurally speaking, it's kind of cool that they just ignore conventional songwriting and do what they want. It just kind of builds up as he almost cries now as he sings out. Like you feel like there's a desperation that kicks in at this part of the song when he goes, sound our dire reveille, rouse all from our apathy, lest we cease to be. And it kind of looks that the situation's whack, and if we do something, we can stop things from going to complete desolation, but the alternative is we don't exist anymore. And then it kind of goes into a little teensy music break as it blows into the chorus, stir us from our wanton slumber, mitigate our ruin, call us to our arms in order. And I love how just those words, again, it's this desperate cry to have us wake up and do something, as opposed to just letting it be for the sake of getting a paycheck or whatever other reason it is. Whether you're a parent who doesn't want to risk their kids, or you're a person who wants to play Call of Duty, I don't know what the reasons are for you, but if we all don't organize and do something, we might all die, is the main point of this. And then it gets kind of cool, a little bit cool with the music here. Gets a little heavier, gets a little building up for a little bit, and then it just has some anticipation. I guess you can call this our first little musical break, as it explodes into like an angrier, more vocaled, sound the dread alarm through our primal body, sound the reveille, to be or not to be, rise. It's powerful to me. So sound the dread alarm, like, fuck, wake up, people, the shit is going on. Like, honestly, there's just little things we can do. If an Amazon fire is burning because people eat freaking hamburgers, and that's a huge part of it, is this beef industry and real estate. So these two industries are fucking funneling it all. Maybe we need to rethink some of these industries that are fueling it all. That's not really where I want to go with this. I really don't want to get pegged in a bunch of ways where I'm commenting too much on this stuff. But when you look at the drastic stuff in the world, you start questioning what fuels it and is it necessary. Through our primal body, go back to the essence of who we are. To be or not to be is from the soliloquy where Hamlet considers suicide. So it's questioning if we are actually going to choose to kill ourselves or not by not making the changes we need to. Stay the grand finale, stay the reading of our swan song and epilogue, one drive to stay alive, elementary, muster every fiber, mobilize, stay alive. And again, it's just passionate, and he's pretty grandiose. I like his grandiose lyrics, like reading of our swan song and epilogue, like take a look at the end and the greatest part of what we'll be known for, the destruction of our own planet and our own home. I don't know. Elementary makes me think of like Watson, like it's so obvious that we just need to muster up whatever to stay alive. And then it's a really good little moment. And then I realize we're only about like 6.5 minutes into the song, and there's a lot of song left, and we're almost out of lyrics. So then we get like the exploding chorus, the last chorus. We're gonna get like, our final freaking cry, right? And then it's almost like some chaos starts to exist musically as it gets real heavy, like some headbanger kind of heavy as it flows in through intensity. About 7 minutes and 10 seconds into it, like it evolves and adds in this extra layering as it's still tension building heaviness. And then the rest of the song is just instrumental, so I'm going to do my best to kind of walk you through the remaining parts as I saw them based on the different noticeable transitions. There's a lot of subtle transitions, but the more giant tone changing. So as an example, around 7 minutes and 30 seconds we move into the smooth guitar lead, as I called it. And it really is just kind of like something that almost feels like when somebody would let go and just twang the strings and whatnot. And what I think is really cool about the music-y parts is they can kind of call on almost any style or decade and just kind of pull in these different... It's almost like they could put Easter eggs of culture into these riffs that, if you understand their influences, really just add a next level of awesome to it. I really thought it was super cool, and it kind of does that for a little, and it gets a little more complicated around 8 minutes and 7 seconds into the track. So it kind of like builds up and gets really, really intense, and the drums get super whatever, and then it kind of drops down to this whispered vocal effects with this kind of ambient effects. And then like by the end you hear the bass kind of come in and start to build up as it begins to take dominance as the main instrument we're about to focus on. And it's just incredible how they can modify just the tracks in such a way where it flows everything together and really just set such a mood where you're vibing in so many different things. And I think the most important part is you never get bored. Now, you might be like, Holden, of course not. It's Tool. But, like, for me, it's like, yo, this is a 13-minute, 38-second song. We 9 minutes in, and I'm still stoked to hear what comes next kind of thing going on, even though I already know. All right, we're going to move into, the bass part of this little bit, which is freaking awesome. And, like, for the next minute or so, it's like kind of like pulsy bass that seems to be holding it all together as it builds in, and some songs, different sounds kind of play over it, and it builds up slowly, and the drums kick in, and it gets super ready, and then the guitar like just takes over and starts almost, I don't know if shredding's the right word, but it just explodes over it. The drum pattern kicks in, and I'm not gonna lie to you, as this little part comes in, it's blowing up, a whole new groove takes over. You're like, another one? There's still more? And then somewhere around 11 minutes and 30 seconds into the track, where this new groove is in effect, it starts doing that, which I took as like a build-up move. Like, I'm ready for vocals. I need something. Like, I wasn't really paying attention to the lyrics when I first mapped it out, so I really just didn't know what was coming next. I'm like, there's gotta be something. There's gotta be some vocals. There's gotta be something to kick in, relieve this tension, because it felt like tension. It felt like maybe when you're in the midst of intercourse and you're building up and you're building up and you're building up and you're just ready to release it all, and it didn't happen, and it just kept building up like some tantric stuff. Anyway, we do get that release though. It totally comes in around 11 minutes and 52 seconds. This like guitar solo thing, I don't know if it's a solo because everyone else is playing. I always thought of solos by itself. Still, it's like a solo-y thing, rocking out. It takes over as the focus. The drums and bass, which are often keeping the same stuff that was previously the dominant sound, but now just as a background sound, which on a deep level keeps congruency for the whole song and allows them, by composing this way, where over your bass groove, let's say, takes 2 minutes, and that 2 minutes of the bass groove does not coincide with any other elements, we'll say, and you have the guitar coming in over here and whatever, it lets them really just create this epic flow that just goes on forever. I don't know if that made sense, but just being able to have different elements start and end before using the mixing to give it prominence, moving it into the background, calling back to them, it's just exciting. And you get that like guitar solo-y bit, and it just blows up, and it's almost like the climax of the song till about 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Where it kind of goes into the almost, I don't want to say stereotypical, but the expected kind of like closing, ends out the song, is done. And what I mean by it's done is you get what I called part 18, because yes, I broke this into 18 separate parts from about 12 minutes and 51 seconds to the absolute end of this. It's a calmer outro, and it leads back to those same ocean sounds that we kind of heard at the beginning of the song. And then it just kind of ends. And that's this track. And you're like, wow. I mean, personally, I'm overwhelmed by it when I first heard it. It was very big, it was very long, and it was very, very, very cool to listen to. I think it's as well composed as anything else on this project. My enjoyment gives it a 4.5 instead of a 5. I like the ones that are 5s a little bit more than I like the ones that are 4.5 on 5s, but like comparing it to all music, I basically added every song on this project that wasn't one of the little skits to my playlist, and I plan on listening to all of these songs a lot more. This one really just starts off with the lyrics, which is this almost prayer to people to wake up and not let the world kill us, not let the world fight back and just wipe us out. Instead, we can behave and maybe make choices to coexist with the world and be a little smarter with it. And then it's almost a self-imposed demise is, I think, the point. And then I feel like musically, you just go through another battle. Like, that's what the music feels like this overall battle that ends with the calm silence of just the ocean. Like, no matter how this goes, no matter what we as human beings choose to do with this circumstance, when all's said and done, it's going to be the calm sounds of the beach. Only this time there was no car sound that kicked in. It's just the calm sounds of nature until it's over, because there will still be some kind of nature that exists, and new organisms will come, and I mean, we'll be gone. Planet will kick the shit out of us and deal with us like a parasite and move on. Anyway, 4.5 on 5. I do believe, I mean, I don't know how much time it is after I edit out all the parts, but like already 30 minutes on this track. That's how amazing this is to me. I just spent like 30 minutes talking about this, and I'm so fucking stoked to talk about Culling Voices. Before discussing this track, because of what I think this song is about, I would like to just touch on what happened last year over on the Twitter land, where Maynard was accused of being inappropriate with some ladies, allegedly abusing his power as the front man of Tool. Alleged, I believe even underage may have been involved in the story. The important part is that it was allegations with nothing proven from an anonymous Twitter account. And there was a little bit of a quick little wave to come at him. He comes off on Twitter, and his response is something to the effect of, sorry I didn't respond right away. Well, not even sorry, but I didn't respond anyway. I was having a life. These allegations are baseless. Try not being on the internet for a minute, see what it does to you. And he moved on. And I just think that before we get into this song or talk about it, I really believe that was the primal motivation of what drove Maynard's vocals on this track. On that note, we do have the beginning of this one, which seems to be a common theme on this album, where you have the intro bit, which lacks the band before the band kicks in. It's an ambient intro. It's just kind of like this sound that slowly kicks in, sets a little bit of a mood, kind of has a calmness to it, almost like an extension of the calmness of the last track with like the nature sound, so it like flows really well together. Only now we've kind of dropped the nature and went back into just more of a ambient kind of sound. Then there's a distinct actual like silence that kicks in, almost like this was a palate cleanser of sorts to get rid of the last vibe and move into the next vibe. And then the guitar kicks in. There's like this guitar, it's like this twangy little thing that you hear kind of calm, and it slowly comes more into prominence. And it's about 30-ish, maybe 40 seconds of the guitar by itself almost. And then the first verse starts. And as the verse sings through, and it's very slow, for the amount of words that he uses, he sings very slow, very calm, kind of stretches it out, but in like a cool way. And you kind of hear, I think, like harmonic vocals. There's like many layers of vocals here, as well as just extra little elements get added to the guitar, like maybe the bass kicks in or whatever. I'm not 100% sure what was done, but it just kind of enhanced it a little bit. And this kind of takes us through till about the 3-minute point of his song, as this slow ambient build up where he goes, disembodies voices deep in my tendencies, conversations we've never had, imagined interplay. Now, I took this like Twitter. They're disembodied voices. There's just people's opinions that are not connected to anything. There's anonymousness, because that's what was really the point of this particular case. There was nobody attached to it. It was just an allegation made from an account that had just been created, that literally was created to make the claim. Deep in my suspicious tendencies. So the fact that there was nobody's face there made him kind of suspicious and not really thrilled with the situation. But also in general, if you want to make this a little bigger, all of us are dealing with these internet voices, where on the internet it's like we treat everyone like they're anonymous, and so we all get a little more suspicious and a little more cautious just because of the nature of the world that we're in. And then conversations we never had, imagined interplay. So this is basically, to me, like, oh, we never talked, we never fucked. What are you saying? This is some bullshit you're making up. And I like that verse. And it can be vague. It can be kind of taken in whatever bigger direction about society, but I think it's really personal to that particular story, because that specific set of words totally syncs up to anonymous person on Twitter accused me of sex we never had. Then there's the psychopathy. Why did I say that wrong like 9 times? Don't you dare point that at me. And lyrically, that is a powerful thing, right? Because he's like, this is ridiculous. He's basically saying balderdash. This is bollocks. This is fuck you, right? That's what he's trying to point out. Don't come at me with your crap. Don't you dare point that at me, because what is that? This is the Twitter machine, the cancel culture. At the point in the specifics, it would have been the Me Too thing. Basically taking this vehicle of mass destruction, this mob mentality that drives so many people, and aiming the target at him. And I just love the fucking rage. Don't you dare point that at me. Like, just the don't you dare. That's some shit that your parent would say when you acted absolutely rude and disrespectful. And that's basically the tone he's taking, is the way y'all behaved was disappointing to me. You disappointed me, Earth. Fuck you. Don't you dare point that at me. I like that. Then after that, there's a brief little musical break. Sorry, I was wrong. I double checked it. It basically goes into the second verse pretty much right away. If anything, it's like a super brief kind of thing. And basically the next verse is heated altercations we'd never had, so I'm told, yet guided by them all, every single one. It kind of sounds very similar to the first verse. The flow is very calm, subdued, held back. The words are vicious. Like, basically, I'm hearing y'all saying some things, I'm told about it, but they're trying to drive the greater narrative. You know, if I think about what he's kind of brought up throughout the album, it's almost like the powers that be are trying to silence him in some way. Or either way, it's all fantasy and he's not down for it, and it's just kind of what it is. And it's just interesting, right? And he kind of even flows in again to the third verse almost through. So about 3.5 minutes to the song, and he just keeps singing calmly. Heated altercations. You know, when you think about actually that second verse a little bit before we move on, so many people let their opinions be governed off of the rumors that are speculating. What I did when I found out about the Maynard situation is I found some forum threads or groupies from back in the day were talking about him and whatnot, and everybody was of age. Everything was fine. I found out that Tool used to give out these little cards to girls to get them backstage, and there's some whatever, but definitely nothing related to what those allegations were about. In fact, he just seemed like a respectful dude in how he treated girls in those moments. And sometimes it seems like they bring them backstage just to chit chat with some cool, sexy ladies rather than even trying to bang or anything. Yeah, that's something I learned in my looking into the lives of groupies and rock stars. Anyway, it keeps on flowing with the same tone. Judge, condemn, and banish any and everyone without evidence, only the whispers from within. I can say that in 2 words. Cancel culture. Basically, people talk some crap about you on Twitter, and then the next thing you know, everyone believes that to be true, because often what will happen is a news journalist, a rich person, a celebrity, somebody will say something not true or doctored to be false. It gets spread around like the viral cancer of social media, and then there's no proof or anything. When the proof comes out, the apology video gets like 1/10 of the attention that the false one ends up garnering, and this just keeps happening over and over again. Literal people lose their jobs or get destroyed or get punished over the most ridiculous things, and then there's no real proof to the pudding, only just what is fabricated and brought up. Anyway, it's just really very apt, and like he went through this himself, but it still fits this album, because if you think about where we're at with it. So in Descending, we look into the fact that the way we live is kind of destroying ourselves, which is a cool follow-up to the battle that the soldier must face, is this essence of everyone kind of choosing the self-destructiveness to it all, where they live. And here, it's almost like, fine, if that's the way it is, don't you fucking dare try to come at me like that, because I'm not interested in the way this is going. I will not let you do this. I am, in fact, the invincible warrior. So yeah, it's really cool to me where we're at with this project. It's like the chorus kicks in for a little bit, and it plays over a couple times. He sings it twice, and it's just sad and heavy and calm, but then the vocals almost just disappear, and this twangy, interesting sound kicks in to follow it up. As the groove continues on, and it's almost like our first real musical break that we're getting on this, even though in the faded vocals he's going imaginal interplay, which is funny because imaginal sounds like vaginal, but it's imaginal, which is imaginary, and interplay is sex because it sounds like intercourse. That is so clever. I really like it. I like the language use a lot, but it flows and it's really eerie and it's nice, and then the song progresses. So now the song kind of builds up. It creates like this new groove. First is the bass and the drums, and then the guitar kind of kicks in, and then it's like, don't you dare point that at me, and like it just kind of has this edge to it, this attitude that's kicked in. So at first it was almost like defeated. Like you almost picture the whole up until this point, the first 6 minutes of this track, it's like, imagine you go on Twitter and everybody's talking shit about you and making up stories or whatever, and you're kind of sad or whatever, and it hurts you and you feel like whatever, and then you get fucking mad and you come back, and that's where we're at with this part of the track, and the heaviness is starting to itch into it. So like over the next like 45 seconds, it's like the previous riff that we had, except it comes in a little more intense and a little heavier, and then it ends on another, don't you dare point that at me, and it's just getting angrier and more intense and more serious with it. The heaviness gets absolutely turned up a notch. It gets like crazier and builds up, and it's almost like every little bit that we've experienced on this track has just or the last little minute or 2 minutes or so has just been the same riff, but each time played through with greater and greater intensity until about 7 minutes and 12 seconds into the song, when that loop flips into something a little more groovy until about 7 minutes 28, when the music just kind of drops and it gets way calmer, and it kind of goes on to this like funkier more styled version of what happens. So from about 7 minutes 28 seconds, 7:55, it's like calm. It's almost like your rage tantrum is over and you're getting cool, calm, and collected like a cucumber, ready to go on this stuff. And that's when it gets funkier, the groove gets proper. You almost picture like the movie montage, the action hero's getting his shit together, his gear on, and he starts almost whispering like, "Don't you dare point that at, don't you dare." And like he kind of really comes in with this energy and this edge that's really delightful. Like it's like the biggest middle finger we've seen on this album so far. Like Maynard took this personal. So around like 8 minutes and 15 seconds into the track, he flips off of that funky whatever, and it just breaks into more aggressive music, but almost driven off of the more funky what we just got. And so the attitude is no longer angry, but it's like groove rage. Like, I'm ready to fuck you up, but I got kung fu styles to do it. I thought that was really dope. And this goes on till about 9 minutes and 15 seconds. At that point, it kind of calms down. The music drops a little bit, and it fades into a similar sort of ambient sound that we had at the beginning. And I like that. I guess Tool, I know that Maynard, according to my boss at least, and if my boss is watching this, I pay attention, seemed to have an issue with putting albums on Spotify because he felt that having you be able to skip to whatever song you wanted and not play it through from beginning to end, as though you couldn't skip songs on a CD, Maynard. Anyway, was a problem. Whether or not that was true, it looks like he really believed that, because a lot of these songs are done in a way where they could be individual grandiose experiences, but they also all work in the project. So maybe he really did care about that. Also, yeah, we're doing the digital version, which has 8 extra minutes if you didn't watch part 1. And I guess they got around CD physical restraints with that and gave 8 extra minutes to those of us that pay for Spotify. It's really weird how the world worked out, where even guys like Tool are like, yeah, I guess there's some advantages to this digital era. And yeah, the song kind of ends, and I'm left with this like really cool feeling with it. Like, I believe it's related to what he went through, but in general, it's still a vague commentary on how it goes, but from the perspective of somebody who's been through it, fought back, didn't give into it, and is now moving on, because he's invincible, the warrior that he is. Go Maynard. No, but for real, our society's weird like that, where so much is not about facts, it's just about how you feel. Oh, I feel like this guy's okay because I saw some memes, and the meme was really, really funny, and so I shared the meme, and I got more memes because that's how social media works. And the next thing you know, 6 months later, I can't even figure out how I got to that opinion I have in the first place, but I know I feel that is the truth. I've seen some things on the internet. I don't know who I was trying to be, so if that offended anybody, I'm really sorry. I was trying to make fun of fuckers who just take their information from memes and don't even realize the psychological brainwashing that gets you to then villainize people on the internet. I digress. I give this a 5 on 5. It's a remarkably well put together song that totally deserves the 5 label that I've been giving out. I don't have a lot more to say about this track at this point. Let's move on to the only kind of half song that was on the physical one that wasn't a monster, and that's called Chocolate Chip Trip. So this guy's 4 minutes and 48 seconds song, which means it's longer than most full-length songs that you'll hear from a lot of people. But on this album, when I saw that as a reviewer, I was like, oh, that's a breath of fresh air. I wonder what that track's going to be like. And it kind of starts off in its own little distinct way. So from 0 to 42 seconds in, you get this little dingly intro, some deep pulsing, and some weird sounds. That's how I'm describing it. Like, it's kind of nice, and it picks in, and it doesn't sound like any of the tracks. Like, it really feels like a weird trip. Around 42 seconds to about 1:12, you get some staticky, vocally stuff that gets added in. From about 1:12 to about 2 minutes, it feels like a beat kicks in, and it's kind of nice, and it's funky, you're going on, it's real enjoyable. And then we're going to hit pause. Apparently, just for the title, because I wanted to bring this up before we get into what the purpose of this track is. Danny said something, and this is, I'm quoting some dude who's quoting something, not directly, but essentially Danny implied that this track was something to chew on. It's just something to have a little snack, which he ties into, chocolate chip cookies in some way. Or chocolate chips, and basically that's what this is. It's a little something to give you a little break between the 10-minute monster tracks, and just a little, something quick and nice to listen to, a little easy listening. This is meant to be like the one track you can throw on if you got 5 minutes, I suppose. So we'll get back into what happens next, because the next, we'll call it 2.5 minutes, is a ridiculously amazing drum solo that just takes you everywhere, and it comes in hard, and it goes all over, and you're just sitting there, and I'm just listening to the dude's timing as he's just transitioning between rhythm to rhythms, and it's like the way his hands fly, like it doesn't feel humanly possible to achieve the level of complexity that guy dropped into a drum solo. And it made me go, if I have to spend over $100 to see Tool live the next time they come to Montreal, I'm absolutely there, because I don't even know if I missed them recently because I didn't care that much or something, but I now really want to see Tool, and I want to see them perform this live, and I want to go on a chocolate chip trip in the concert. And it's really just that. I don't have a lot of ways to properly describe to you how awesome this is, but if you want to skip the intro stuff, jump to about 2 minutes and play it through, and it's freaking fresh. But yo, it's just a magical experience, honestly. Like, the more I listened to it, the more I was like, this is so weird, because all this weird techno-y almost stuff is around the drum solo. All that dingly crap that we came in at the beginning, it doesn't really go away, but the drum solo is almost amplified by the ambient noises that they chose to encompass it around, and it's an enthralling experience. And I don't know, I don't have a lot more to say about it, but my enjoyment is absolutely high on this track. I really thought it was incredible to listen to. I would highly recommend this one if you don't want to commit to the long ones. If you're just going to do something to see how fucking talented they are, or at least the drummer is, but they are, check out Chocolate Chip Trip. I'm giving this a 5 on 5. I mean, I guess it's a good way to put a drum solo on. Like, because everybody likes a drum solo, but I guess it's kind of hard sometimes to just fit such a rhythmic thing into the groove-driven tracks that they've been providing for us. So this is just a sneaky way to get around what makes sense, per se, by doing something else that makes sense. I'll be honest, I have no fucking idea if this fits into the story. It's just a groovy little trip. So maybe it's to represent the weird wonkiness of the world. As we move in to the last real song, as in the monster of monsters, the 15-minute and 44-second magnus opus of this album, Tempest with a 7. So this song starts off kind of calm. Guitar riff, it's kind of nice, it's just playing through. Good 45 seconds goes by, 40 seconds, whatever, and it just kicks in a little bit. It plays on till about 1:16, and then the song starts. But before we really go through it, it's spelled 7 instead of Tempest, because I guess stylistically it looks like a T. 7 has a lot of value in numerology related to God and things. So what I take, y'all want me to do it, alright, I'll tell you. A tempest is a fucking storm of destructive darkness. So it's basically a really bad storm that fucks shit up. So if we go a little bit imaginative here, and we think tempest with a 7, maybe it's godlike figures who are creating a fucking storm, and that's the symbolism of the 7, is my theory. Bonnie wanted me to look it up for y'all, but I felt I'd let my imagination run over and just let you know what I thought. And then, yeah, some interesting factoids about this song, because Justin Chancellor has a little quote here, and I thought it would be fun to share it with you. There are riffs on a new album that Adam had before I was even in the band. So we're talking like literally 90s shit. The last track, Tempest, pronounced Tempest. The main body of the first chunk of the song is a verse, and then a really heavy recurring riff. Something I came up with in the time signature of 21. we'd been trying, and I'm like, wow. And anyway, it ended up being something that they kept trying to implement into all of their albums from way back at the, the old days from Enema, and it never got used. Every album since, he tried to get that riff put on somehow, and then it never worked until this album when it finally worked. And we'll get to that riff because that riff is fucking cool. But what I'm trying to say is it's so fascinating how they just wrote all these riffs and then just put it together until things work as a song. And it's just dope how they can do that. Like, it's amazing. Anyway, so about a minute and 16 in, it like kicks in. It like goes to the next level. So the guitar like kicks it up a notch. The bass is really like machine gun type shit going on. Everything's getting picked up, and the vocals start to keep in over this, and he's like keep it calm, keep calm, keep it calm. And the way he's doing it's almost scat like in like this cool percussionistic intense rhythm. And then he ends that with the only cuss word on the album, fuck, here we go again. Which is important, right? Because when you hear keep calm and then you go, fuck, here we go again, and then you think back to keep calm and carry on. Literally, the idea of keeping calm often is simply propaganda campaigns from leaders that are trying to get you to not point out what doesn't make sense and to be complacent with the way that things are. Now at work, okay, I suppose I should keep calm because it's in my best interest to keep calm. In life, sometimes you gotta wonder why we keep calm when the world's dying. But that's where it is. So what I take from that fuck, here we go again, keep in mind I've heard this song, so I'm projecting a little bit what I know is the song's about. That is the scattered message of our leaders of the world, and it's just like nonsense. So fuck, here we go again. And then we get into the first verse, which is just freaking exciting. And the rhythms on this track are insane as the first verse is going on and he's like singing over it. Everybody's like, I don't know how to describe it. I feel like we heard some complicated shit on the other tracks, but they took the complicatedest stuff that they had and used it for this song, right? So I'm really not lyrically we have heat, lightning flash but don't blink, misleading tranquility ruse, you're gonna happen again, that's what I think, follow the evidence, look it dead in the eye, you are darkness trying to lull us in before the havoc begins into a dubious state of serenity, acting on surprise when you're caught in the eye, we know better, it's not unlike you, we know your nature. Let's be real, this is just like politicians and world leaders and the people who do all the really bad things to us over time, and how they continually do the same crap and create the same ruses and the same tricks, but ultimately to lull us into a dubious state of serenity before the havoc begins. And if you look at what's happening in the entertainment industry, the way that they're almost making as much as possible free to play. If you give the people who can't afford video games to play that are enjoyable, then everybody plays the video games and everybody in a sense drinks the Kool-Aid and everybody kind of gets all peaceful while the bad things happen and we all get kind of in our serenity, our peacefulness. And I don't know, it's really apt. And this time though, the follow the evidence, it's going to happen again. That's what I think. I mean, I straight up think that Trump wins the next election. In Canada, Andrew Scheer wins the next election. And you're going to watch as the conservative, money-driven people who have properly galvanized their side through memes on social media, which is a lot of what this album has kind of been talking about in a sense, they're going to win because they are darkness. And even if they present themselves with smiles and pretend like they're nothing, those of us that know, I suppose, we know better. We the people know better because that is the nature of the beast. In a sense, that's the nature of the tempest. These guys are tempests to the world, you know? Anyway, that was the first verse and it's pretty freaking pumped. And then we get into this musical part where we discover the riff that we were describing before. So the bass just kicks in and it's just this rhythm that I've never really heard a bassist do before, and it's just the way it's composed is hype. And then the guitar picks in for a little bit and it will flow into the second verse. Honestly, the second verse is a very musically similar feel to the first, just a little more intense. So it's built up a bit because, you know, that's how it goes. It progresses. Lyrically, blame it on all the bastards when you're blowing out. Shame on you now. No amount of wind could begin to cover up your putin stench and demeanor. And that's fascinating, right? Because when somebody is clipped, it's all about the snitches and everybody's always got answers, and it's all about finding blame for the appropriate situations. As long as there's a scapegoat, you can do whatever you want, you know? But the truth is we've reached a point where the stench is so bad, the wind can't even get rid of it. So end of the day, it's like you're so toxic, you can't hide it anymore. Calm as cookies and cream, so it seems. We're not buying your dubious state of serenity, acting all surprised when we caught in the lies, etc. So we look at this person, somebody like a Trump figure or whoever, who's just so calm and so composed, and they know what is going on in the world, yet they don't really seem to project the truth. And he kind of flips the end of the song and goes, yeah, we're not buying that no more. It's not real. We're not into that. It's just what it is. It's not unlike you. We know your true nature. And it's really sick. It's really enjoyable. And I really like the flow of it. I feel like from a lyrical perspective, this is one of the most lyrics we get. And then we get a little music-y break. There's going to be a lot of music-y breaks. So somewhere around after that verse, it kind of flows out. And we get like that crazy bass rhythm with crazy drum rhythms that I haven't heard. And the bass is kind of hidden in the background. But you heard that prominent bass early on, so that it's almost like they made it loud once early so that they could tease it for when it came in, so you can catch the attention of that. And it's just driving underneath it. The drums is driving underneath it. The guitar takes over and it starts getting really freaking sexy. And this is till about 4 minutes and 48 seconds when like the guitar kind of like kicks in and is followed by this like super intense groove part. So it gets like intense for a bit. I think I said that. I don't know. Sorry if the editing's a little off on this one. And it just kind of like the guitar kicks out. It's got some intensity, and then it grooves into this calm, versy thing, and it's just like serene almost for a while. So you get a little bit of vocals, but mostly it's kind of just going calm before the torrent comes, calm before the torrent comes. I haven't actually looked up what torrent really means. Let's do that right now. It makes me think of torrential if I had to like guess, so, or the things we download when we steal musics. A strong or fast-moving stream of water is a torrent, so that makes sense. That's basically like saying the calm before the storm comes. Now, I think it's important because then it goes, but I think it's important because of how it impacts, I think, the music that follows it. It's a little tumultuous. Like we had a little bit of energy right before this that kind of implies to me, you know, like you can see the clouds coming or whatnot. And then I like the way the bridge ends with calm before the tempest comes to rain all over. And it makes it very clear that this storm, this person that was described, is absolutely going to try to rule everything and be a very negative Nilly in the world. But then after that, the music, it's very calm and like groovy in a way that is not as intense and angry. And that heavy bass that we had earlier is really not there anymore. It's just smoother. So up until about 7 minutes 27 seconds at this point, we have a couple of minutes of that like flowing. About a minute of like the smooth flowiness, and then around 7 minutes 27, a new guitar sound kind of kicks in and it starts to build up. We get the heavier bass starting to kick in around 7:46. It just goes insane, and it's literally one of this part might be, from a musical perspective, my favorite little like 30 seconds of the album. From about 7:27 to 8:01 on this track, stellar shit. Anyway, it's like that till about 8 o'clock, because it's the time. Anyway, 8 minutes in, when the guitar lets loose with some fadiness, and then, you know, it keeps evolving. Like, it's got like a fadey effect on it, and then it's like, I'm not doing it right, but it just goes into this like higher end of tone, and it's just incredible. And you got to keep in mind, it's been now, we're at about 8 minutes in. I'd say since at least 5 minutes or 40, maybe 6 minutes, it's been nothing but straight, evolving, beautiful, freaking music. And now let's just take a moment to realize this song is 16 minutes long. We're only about like halfway through. And it's truly already dropped some of the best music we have heard on this project. Anyway, it keeps on going, it keeps on flowing. The guitar goes it keeps differentiating somewhere around 9 minutes 11. It just like morphs into this like whole new sound that it like carries on for, a good 30 seconds or whatever, and then we're gonna move into the next vocal part, which still maintains some dope music. So like Maynard at the beginning of this part is definitely in like the background, and he kind of comes more into prominence as he repeats the main line, but disputing intentions invites devastation, which is fascinating. So if we all are arguing about the intentions of things, so we can pick a subject that is really a huge conversation that strives most social debates. Somebody puts out a blackface clothing. What was their intention? That's what impacts whether we accept the apology. Not that they made the apology. It's, were they intending to make fun of black people, or were they ignorant? Anyway, that invites devastation because it's missing the point of anything really. It's just a weird twist. And then it goes, a tempest must be true to its nature. A tempest must be just that. A tempest must be just that. So a tempest must be true to its nature. It will be a violent storm. And then that's what a tempest will be, because that's what a tempest is. And it just repeats it over and over again. But like, he has like, a tempest must be. And it's like really fucking intense and really fucking angry. And it's just, there's almost literal hate in his voice as he expresses it. It's really powerful, and I think it is one of the coolest parts of the album. Like it stands out to me. Like you hear it and you're like, damn, you are not going to forget that. And it rolls like that till about 10 minutes and 35 seconds in the song. But previously we had the calm before the storm, so the music was calmer. Yeah, it got funky or whatever, but not like what happens after this part when he almost screams out at the end in rage, and then the drums freak the fuck out and it gets into head boppy, heavy ass fucking thumpy goodness. But really what's going on is the storm is creating its devastation at this point. Musically, it's going into that vein of things, and it's just this intense, crazy build up till about 11 minutes and 10 seconds. And it's got this weird spacey guitar solo for about 25-30 seconds, and it like flips around and it keeps like vibing on this ride that we've been on of just incredible, grandiose, intense music. And this definitely happens till about where I'm calling part 17 for the record, 11:51 of the track, when it calms down a bit. I took this as the eye of the storm. So like the storm hits and then there's the eye in the middle. When it calms down a little bit, you can hear these individual bass notes like doom, kind of just accenting the overall feel of all of this. And it just kind of is nice, and it kind of brings you down in the energy as it flows until about 12 minutes and 46 seconds into the track, where we get into the next little bit of singing. The way he layers his voice in this verse is truly, truly interesting. He goes like, somebody actually put it in the Genius comments. I'm scrolling to that. Anyway, control your delusion. And then like the word insane is like faded in, like you recorded it separately, but it still kind of works grammatically. So control your delusion, insane and striking at random, and then victim of your certainty. But just different parts of the verse will flow in and be layered over each other in such a way where it's truly a fascinating and riveting vocal experience that I can't say I've heard many people pull off quite to the level he's done. And therefore, so anyway, control your delusion, insane and striking at random, victim of your certainty, and therefore your doubt's not an option, blameless. The template will be just that. So try as you might, feeble, your attempt to atone, your words to erase all the damage cannot. And I believe this is an interesting point because I've been having this debate about like billionaires and crap. So they do a bunch of damage in the world and then they spend the rest of their life trying to redeem it. So in a sense, I think what he's putting out there is saying just because you're now trying to do good, it doesn't undo all the damage you did. The way you fucked with people's lives and toyed with people and caused problems for so long, you might find yourself blameless. You may feel that you are able to get to this point where you're above the consequences of your actions, but try as you might, you'll never atone. You are scum. You did do what you did do. And I'm like, damn, the way he sings it is weird. It's interesting. It's alive. And it's just fucking fascinating. And then you're like, holy crap, we're only about 13 minutes and 23 seconds in. There's still another couple of minutes left on this track. And then we get into our next music-y part. From about, I don't know, 13 minutes, 23 on, it gets like cool guitar, bassy rhythms kind of coming together. It gets real groovy around 13:42 as it like picks into something that just makes you really want to move. And it kind of just keeps going on like that till about 14 minutes in this song where it flips into a different flow. And what's incredible about these different flows is they sound like they belong next to each other, but they also end up not sounding very much like each other. So it just gives you like 40 seconds of this, 45 seconds of that, 46 seconds of that, a minute of this. And the way they just layer in the different choices of what they use, like the same bass line might get used like 7 parts of this song, but not in the same combination as everything else. So it just keeps making everything sound incredible till it gets to about 14:40 where it flips up again, and then it kind of adds in the vocals at this point. The Tempest Must Be Just That kicks in again. I'm like, there's an intensity to the way he says the second time, a tempest must be just that, like, well, like, but it's quieter, like whispery, but like more intense, I feel. And it just flows to a little bit, and then we get to the little end part for the last like 30 seconds where it feels like the end of one of those rock shows where they're about to break instruments. Now keep in mind, this is the end of the physical album, and it just kind of plays it out, and it ends the song on like a calmer note. It takes about 10 seconds, but there's no like anything else because there is on the digital, but not on the physical. This is the best song above 15 minutes I've ever heard, and it might be the best song above 10 minutes I've ever heard. This is the best song on this album from a music perspective. Lyrically, I don't know if I agree with that. I didn't think too deep on what my favorite song lyrically is, but I think my favorite experience on this was Tempest. I actually listened to this song a full 15 minutes and 44 seconds more than I probably should have for the sake of time, to the point of pissing off my girlfriend because it was just so good. But because it's 15:44, she kept talking and interrupting me halfway through. Still, she's wonderful, and so is this song. And I just don't know. I saw a comment on Genius that kind of put it out like this. Let me see if I can find it so I can quote the person. This was just in the bottom. So this is from iGod, and he goes, "This song is fitting as the final track on Fear Inoculum. This album is such an excellent evolution of Tool. It's such a brilliant closer, and if this is quite literally the last track on the last album they ever deliver, it is their magnus opum." And as far as like listening to this song, I feel like it is a magnus opum by comparison to the other songs on the album. Like, it feels like it's an actual step up to me in terms of just brilliance and skill. Like, everything else had different aspects that I loved about it, but this one was flossing on me. This was the most complicated, dope ass shit they put on this project. Obviously it's a 5, like there's no dispute in my mind. So yeah, because this is the digital album review, there is still Mockingbeat. So this has like a bunch of animal sounds, kind of has some like weird electronic-y industrial feel to it. It's 2 minutes long. It's a little outro, and it ends with some like bird squawking and crap. And I think it's got a purpose, and I agree with the person on Genius who I'm stealing this from, 420 Swagget PvP. If you're watching this review, you're the real MVP here. But if we think about what The Tempest is, it's a perfect storm that in the context of the album, when we look at songs like Descending and Culling Voices, so Descending sets up the fact that through our culture, we are choosing suicide as a group of people, whereas in Culling Voices, it shows how, because of our willingness to jump on feelings over facts. Chocolate Chip Trip's just a fun little break. And then Tempest presents the real villain, the people who control the narrative, in a sense. And should they succeed, which they will because people don't want to stop them. I mean, this is just the way it's being presented in the album. I think we can stop them, in theory. It could be done. Will it? I don't know. And what happens after nature kicks our asses and exterminates humanity? Well, nature just comes in and takes over stuff again and just kind of moves back in. And I think it's meant to be distorted to present a broken future. It's not what it was. But I think the animals are meant to represent the fact that humanity is wiped out and that animals are going to come back. I've read a couple books that have implied that nature would exist beyond humanity should humanity not be here anymore. And so, anyway, I thought that was a really philosophical and cool way to end the project because it really meant something to the grand picture of it. And then the first time I got to the end, the way the birds are shrilling at the end, I went ahead and I hit play on Fear Inoculum, the track again. And the way the sirens come in at the beginning, I found worked really well in terms of the way of looping the album. So if you put on Mockingbeat and you kind of hit the loop and you let it just keep playing, it just, to me at least, flowed perfectly back into Fear Inoculum, giving me the impression that they were trying to turn this into a bit of an infinity album. An infinity album being an album where it's recorded and composed in a way where when you get to the end, it's basically like restarting the album, and it's like an album that never ends. So you never really have an end point to it. But I think it's a little deeper than that, because from an evolutionary perspective, then if we get new animals to come back, then new animals evolve, and in theory this cycle just keeps repeating forever and ever, with new ape-like Homo sapien species in the futures pulling the same crap, and it's just what's probably gone on forever. I don't know. That was just where I got to that with my imagination. I kind of like the ending as far as the skits go. I'm gonna call it anything that wasn't one of the monster songs of skits. This was my favorite of the three little skits, and it was cool. I give it a 4.5. I thought it was a nice way to end the album, and it was a little nicer than the physical one, the hard ending, because I feel like it adds this little extra element of imagination. But I would never listen to this track unless I was listening to the album. And holy crap, we did it. Got through Tool. Spent so much time this weekend on this album review, so I very much hope that y'all appreciate this and share with me in the comments what you thought of this project. Me, for wrap-up time, I'm giving you 2 grades. The real album review, the one that counts because it's the 10 tracks that I reviewed, so we'll call it the digital score. Actually, I can do it like that. The digital release edition is a 4.65 on 5. It's a fucking classic. It's an amazing classic. It's not even just, it's in. Like, I'm gonna feel this way in a decade level of dope. 4.85 for the version that's just the 7 songs with no skits. The version with no skits, the physical release, 4.85. This is up there. It is either it's in the top 3 grades I've ever given an album on this channel, ever. And I believe that this album is that well made. I think this is one of the greatest pieces of music I have personally ever heard. And I'm not just sucking dick here for the sake of saying some shit. I'm saying that the level of complexity, the mixing, the mastering, the attention to detail, the sheer perfection, how every song creates groove after groove for you to get lost in, how there's a clear and cohesive story creating the concept of Fear Inoculum from beginning to end. Even the ending of the album is brilliantly predictive of what is likely to happen, challenging how we as humans tend to deal with these kinds of moments, like when we face them in our imaginations. All I'm trying to say is this was one of the most magnificent albums I have reviewed, and it was so worth the amount of time I've spent listening to it. And it makes me want to go back in time and make sure that we review the other 3 Tool albums that we still need to get to. So if you want to see that, let me know in the comment section. If you liked this review, let me know. If you hated this review, let me know and tell me how I could do better. And then if you're mean, I'm try not to be mean. I'll respond better if you're polite. I'm a Canadian. Still, thank you all for watching. If you did like it, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of these, please hit the subscribe button. And yeah, special thanks to the patrons: Ismail Gadamsi, Chris Prado, Jonathan Barnes, DJ Black Hurricane, Linda Williams, Coney Sparks. They support what we do. They helped us get a new camera. They get to tell us what albums to review. They're going to be paying for our website soon. And overall, I just feel like life is a lot cooler now that we've grown all together as this big old family. And if you want to join that family, you can check it out on Patreon, and that would make you the VIP. Nah, but for real, it would mean the absolute world to all of us over here, because it's not just me over here. There's a few of us. Anyway, thank you for watching, every single one of you. I don't know if I said that enough, but it really means the world to me. So have yourselves a great day. And now I'm going to go get ready for the next whatever thing. I think I'm going to have to go to the grocery store. Ugh, bye.